Please greet each other, handshakes, hugs, whatever you prefer.
Hey ladies, Pastor Brooke here, and we are officially in summer, which means the kids are home all day, every day, and you're about to need a break. So we have got some special events coming up just for you ladies this summer. One is June 23rd and the other one is July 21st. You're not going to want to miss either of these events, even if it's just enough for you to get out of your house for the evening. Our first event we're calling She Worships. We're going to get together and have some amazing female-led worship. Cindy Johnston from Movement City Church is going to be here telling her incredible story. It's going to encourage you. It's going to empower you. It's going to be the kind of night that you are going to walk away refreshed and ready to go. The other night is called She Laughs. This is in July. This is towards the end of the summer, and we're going to get together and we're just going to have a good time laughing. We're going to have games. We're going to have just anything that you can think of that is fun, that is relaxing. You get to be with other adults. You get to be away from your kids. You get to be out of your house, and we're just going to have a really great time. So I hope that you will join us for both of these events. You can register at withthewell.com/women. If you know that you can be at both of those events, you can register for them at the same time for a discount. Otherwise, you can register for each event separately. We're so excited to spend the summer with you, and we just can't wait to see what God does at these events.
Amen. Pastor Jack here. I wanted to hop on real quick and invite you to join me this fall for our men's retreat. Now we're changing things up just a little bit. Instead of heading west, we're going to head down south. Instead of pew pew, we're going to do 4 and fish on. It's fishing, it's golf, it's, hey, if that doesn't work for you, and let's just be honest, you just need to get out of the house, join with me and the Well Church men. It's the second weekend of October. We're heading down to Lake Granbury. We've got this incredible VRBO that we'll be in. Every man gets his own bed. You don't have to share a bed, right, or nothing like that. It's really an incredible house that we'll be renting for the weekend. But like I said, it's golf, it's fishing. There's a dock right there. Hey, if you got a boat or a buddy that has a boat, that's even better, right? And you can get a boat for that weekend. Just reach out to me and let me know. We would love to have some even guided fishing trips. We're still putting together the details on what you can add on to your retreat experience, but several rounds of golf, several outings going fishing. Or like I said, you just want to bring a deck of cards and just hang out. That would be a great idea too. You need to get away. And I hope that you will join me for the second weekend of October this year. There'll be some details to follow, maybe some links to click, and again, sign up, register early. I believe that this will fill up quick. So hope you can join me. God bless you. See you again soon.
Set fire to your hair, poke a stick at a grizzly bear, eat medicine that's out of date, use your private parts as piranha bait. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die. Dumb ways to die, so many dumb ways to die.
I love this series so much. It's only the second week, and I love it. This might be my favorite thing we've done all year. Well, good morning. Welcome to the Well. My name is Brooke. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. Pastor Jack and Miranda are on a much-deserved vacation this week, and so I'm honored to be here with you, to be speaking to you today and continuing our series called Dumb Ways to Die. So if you are over the age of 40-ish, maybe you haven't seen this trend. It's on TikTok. If you're my age, it's on Reels on Instagram, because I'm too old for TikTok, but I'm not like young enough to, anyway, it doesn't matter. So I've been watching them on Instagram. I want to just show you really quickly what these videos look like when you see them on the internet, what this trend is. Basically what it is you see somebody about to do something really, really dumb. Let's watch this really quick.
Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. John ways to dry. Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. John ways to dry. Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. John ways to dry. Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. John ways to dry. Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. John ways to dry. Eat a 2-week-old unrefrigerated pie. John ways to dry.
I know Jack's not here, so I had to do my part and add a cat video in there. Oh, man. The internet has got to be smarter, y'all. We got to get smarter on the internet. It's not great. So we've called this series Dumb Ways to Die because we're looking at the book of Judges. And if you've ever taken any time to read the book of Judges, it is full of these examples of these very tragic, very horrific, very dumb ways to die. And so we're taking a little bit of time to dig into this book these next few weeks. And just to give you a little bit of background on what the book of Judges is, it's classified as tragic literature. So it's not a book that's full of role models for you to look after and to try to model yourself after, because of course the Bible isn't like this moral handbook anyway. It's the story of God's people and the story of Jesus saving his people. So what we have here in the book of Judges, this is what happens after the death of Joshua. So we have just a little history lesson. The Israelites were in slavery in Egypt. God miraculously saved them and brought them out of Egypt. Moses led the people for a long time. Then Joshua took over for Moses, led them into the promised land. And so we get to the point in Judges where Joshua has passed on. It says in Judges 2:7, we'll start there. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all of the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers, which means they also passed away. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. These are false gods. Verse 12, it says, they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. So what we have here in the book of Judges is this result, what happens under Canaanite influence when the Israelites are under the influence of God's enemy. And so we have this tragic literature, which is not typical Hollywood storytelling. It's not this brief story with a redemptive arc that ends in a positive way. These stories are close studies of how a person slowly and step by step and decision by decision walks away from God. Jack talked about this last week when he talked about Samson, how he didn't just turn away from God in one moment, but it was slowly, step by step, he walked away from God. And so it's uncomfortable. It's hard for us to read it. It's hard for us to study it because there's not really anyone to root for. And as soon as you start cheering for a character, they do something dumb and let you down. So the book of Judges is not Ted Lasso. It's Succession, okay? And if you're a Christian and you've never seen Succession, it's like Breaking Bad. And if you're really a Christian and you've never seen Breaking Bad, it's like the Godfather trilogy. Can we do that? Okay? Where as soon as you start to cheer for someone, as soon as you get on board with them, they let you down. And it's tragic and it's hard to cheer somebody on in these stories. It should make you feel a little bit sick to your stomach the way that a bad news story kind of just puts a pit in your stomach and it doesn't make you feel very good. It should arouse this holy impatience in you for people who were sinning, for people who are walking away from God. You should be a little bit tense when you read the book of Judges. But why do we study it? Why is it in the Bible? Why would we bother taking the time to read about it? Because the book of Judges is a reflection of how life actually works. People let you down. People aren't perfect. People know the right thing to do and do the wrong thing anyway. And that's why we study this book. Because if you start seeing yourself in some of these characters, that's a red flag, and you got to step back and do a little bit of self-examination. And so we're calling this series Dumb Way to Die because we're seeing some really dumb ways to die. I've had a few people ask me, which dumb way to die are you doing today? And it's going to be great. Just wait. It's going to be awesome. I had to go to Lowe's. No, I had to go to Home Depot to find an illustration for today's dumb way to die. So here you go. So our story today is actually told twice. It's told back-to-back in Judges 4 and 5. In Judges 4, it's told as a narrative, so it's a prose. There's a narrator. They just tell you what happens. And then in chapter 5, it's a song. It's a victory song. And the Hebrew in chapter 5 actually shows us that this may be one of the most ancient poems in Israel's history. And they would sing this song, this victory song, to tell the story of what was happening, to tell the faithfulness of God for the generations to come. So we're going to bounce a little bit between these two chapters. So here's our key characters that open us up in the first part of this story. The first one is Deborah. We've talked about Deborah there's been mentions of her in these past several weeks, but Deborah is a prophetess. She is Israel's judge. She's unique in that she is the judge administratively, but she's also an oracle from God. So she receives messages from God and she gives them to the people. She's been judging the people at this time. We have Barak. He's an Israelite military leader. He's called up by Deborah to lead the Israelites in an attack, and we're going to see that here in just a second. We have Jabin, who's the Canaanite king. He is the king who is ruling over the Israelites at this time. And we have Sisera, who's the commander of Jabin's army. He is an evil ruler. He oppresses the Israelites. It says in chapter 4, verses 2 and 3, that he has 900 chariots of iron, and he used it to oppress the people of Israel for 20 years. The people of Israel, God's people, have been in captivity. They've been slaves to the Canaanites for 20 years. And so historical records can confirm the size of Sisera's army. They can confirm the number of chariots that they had. These iron chariots were like the tanks of the ancient world, okay? They were large, they were fast, they were bulletproof, if you will. Not that there were bullets at that time, but they had these razor-sharp knives that would come out of the side, so they would clear out any living thing that was in their path. And so having this army of 900 iron chariots made it very easy for Sisera to oppress the Israelite people. For 20 years, he did it with ease. And so the people are tired of being oppressed. They're tired of being slaves. And so they call out to God and they ask him for help. And so God gives a message to Deborah, and she calls up Barak to tell him what God has said. So in Judges 4, 6, and 7, it says, she sent and summoned Barak and said to him, has not the Lord of God of Israel commanded you? Go, gather your men at Mount Tabor. Take 10,000 from the people of Naphtali and the people of Zebulun, and I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him to your hand. It's a directive from God. It's not just a command to go, it's a guarantee that there will be victory because God is going to do the work and he is going to deliver the people to Barak. And the response of Barak should be a no-brainer. It should be an emphatic yes. When you have the God of Israel who has done all of these things in your past and delivered your people over and over, and he says, I'm going to give the enemy to you, your answer should be yes. But this is tragic literature. And Barak says to Deborah, if you will go with me, then I'll go. But if you won't go with me, I won't go. Ted Lasso would never, okay? He would never. And so what we see in Barak's response is that he has this heart that's trusting more in human strength than in God's promise. God's promise was heard, but he hadn't seen it. He knew the strength of Deborah. He had seen her lead the people, and he was confident in what she could do. And so he wanted to lean on her human strength instead of the promise that God gave him. See, this is a new generation that hadn't witnessed the things that happened as the Israelites were coming out of Egypt. They hadn't witnessed the miracles that happened when Moses and Joshua were leading the people. And so he was operating in this fear, and he was swayed by the Canaanite ways. And it's frustrating for us to watch. And I want you to know today that the next generation has to believe in miracles. This Gen Z that's coming up is coming up in a generation where they have a system for everything. And if the system isn't working, this next generation is not afraid to break the system and change it. And so if we have a generation that comes up that believes in systems more than they believe in miracles, then the power of salvation is going to be lost, because salvation is the greatest miracle. And if we try to break salvation down into a system, we're going to lose the grace and the majesty that comes with salvation. And so the next generation, just like this generation, needed to know the miracles from the time of Moses and Joshua. Our next generation has to know the miracles that God is doing in our lives. And so Deborah willingly goes to battle with Barak. She believes in the promise. She believes this word that was given to her by God. But since Barak didn't trust and obey God's instructions, he's not going to get any glory for the victory. It says in 4:9, nevertheless, the road on which you're going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hands of a woman. Another way to translate this is, because of your hesitancy, the way that you're coming about this, the way that you're responding to this message, you're not going to get any credit. Not that he deserved any credit, because God promised him that he was going to be the one to do the work. But he was also willing to give Barak the honor and the glory for that victory. But he wasn't going to get it because of his hesitancy, because of his doubt. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking, okay, surely Barak is the biggest knucklehead in this story, you're wrong. And before we get to the battle that happens, we have this little sidebar that happens in verse 11 where we're introduced to Heber the Kenite. The Kenites are they're a nomad clan, and they're metalsmiths and they're artisans. And so a few things to know about them is that they make weapons and they make materials for the military, and they typically stay neutral in all things political and all things that have to do with the military, because they sell weapons to both sides. And so they don't want to take a side because they don't want to lose business from either side. And so typically people leave them alone. There's no threat from either side because of their neutrality. So that's something that it just tells you in verse 11, but it's going to be important later. So now we get to the battle. This battle that God has promised the victory to Barak, to the Israelites. Have you guys ever seen Mulan? The cartoon one? I guess we have to specify now. The cartoon one? Anyway? Josh is very excited about us seeing Mulan, okay? There's a scene in Mulan where they're at the bottom of a hill, or they're at the bottom of a mountain in a valley, and they look up and they see Shan Yu. Okay, they see the leader of the army that they're fighting. And it's just him at first, and then all of a sudden, they see the whole army that's with him, and it's huge. It's like thousands and thousands of people, and they hear this big war cry that happens, and the music's building, and it's very dramatic. And then they all start charging down the mountain into this valley, and it kind of like makes your stomach turn a little bit because they've got this tiny little army in the valley and this huge army that's coming down the hill. And it's very intimidating. And so this is the image that I get when I read about this battle. The Israelites are at the top of the mountain. God told them to go to the top of Mount Tabor. And Sisera and his army are down in the valley. He's been drawn out. See, he hears some murmurings that Israel is putting an army together. And so Sisera panics a little bit, and he takes all of his army. He takes all 900 chariots. He takes 10,000 men, and he takes them all down into the valley down by the river. And it says in verse 15, the Lord confused Sisera and all of his chariots and all of his army before Barak by the edge of the sword. What happens is Sisera and his army get very, very confused. And the Israelite army is able to just come in, sweep in, and take care of all of them. But it feels like something's missing here. Because he says, we had these chariots. How are these men on foot taking care of the chariots? And so when we go to Judges chapter 5 and we see the victory song, we see what God did there in the valley. It says, the earth trembled, the heavens dropped. Yes, the clouds dropped water. They marched into the valley. Into the valley they rushed at his heels. From heaven the stars fought. The torrent Kishon swept them away. See, what God did is he brought in this massive thunderstorm, this massive rainstorm that confused the army and flooded the river. And so when the river started to flood and overflow and water was all in the valley, all of these chariots that Sisera brought to fight the people were rendered useless. They couldn't move in the mud. They became sitting ducks here in the valley. And so this weapon that Sisera had that made him powerful was rendered useless because of this great storm that God brought. See, an enemy's tool is no match for the promise of God. And an enemy's weapon becomes useless. An enemy's weapon is the downfall when it comes to the hand of God in your problem, in your life. What if Barak had said no? What if his doubt was enough to say, no, God, I don't want to do this. I don't think that you can do this. Barak would have died a slave to Canaan, and that would have been a dumb way to die. The Israelites didn't have to do anything, and the victory was theirs. And I love how God used the weather as this way of scaring off and disturbing Sisera's troops, because these were Canaanites who worshiped gods of Baal, who believed controlled the weather. And God said, not today, not those gods. I am in control. It was a deliverance that Israel didn't deserve, but God graciously granted it to them. I think we have like a live picture of what it looked like there at the battle that day. It says, all of the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not a man was left. And I like to think that it says not a man was left because Sisera maybe was actually like a weasel. Because the next verse says Sisera fled away on foot. He had all the means to remain in power, but he heard murmurings. So he gathered every resource that he had, brought them all down into the valley. And he falls into the trap that was set by the Lord, just like Deborah promised back in verses 6 and 7. So if Deborah was right about that, then we need to talk about her being right about Sisera being delivered into the hands of a woman. Enter Yael, our last character in this story. says Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Remember, we were introduced to the Kenites. For there was peace between Jabin and the house of Heber the Kenite. So they were nomads, metalsmiths, they were neutral. And this verse tells us that this particular family was friendly with the king, the Canaanite king. However, it also tells us back in verse 11 that Heber was a descendant of the father-in-law of Moses. And so there is a connection to the Israelites. There is a connection to Moses and the people of God. So this is tragic literature. And he doesn't come to Heber's tent. He comes to the tent of his wife, Yael. And he assumes that he's in friendly territory. But a Canaanite should have thought anyone who could be remotely identified with Moses could be a potential threat or a spy or an enemy. And so you make bad decisions when you're on the run. We're going to count some red flags today. Ready? You want to hold my red flags for me? Either one of you? Yes. So, they're all like, what? Come here. No, right here. You just hold the flags for me. There's only a few. I mean, there's more than there should be. Okay. Here's the red flags. Yael comes out to greet him and invites him into her tent. This would have been highly unorthodox for any man to be in a tent of a woman, especially a man who's not her husband. So that's red flag number 1. Red flag number 2. He asks for water, and she gives him milk instead. Are there any parents of young children in the room? Milk is the sleepy drink, right? We don't give water at bedtime. We give milk at bedtime because it makes their bellies nice and full, and it makes their brains nice and foggy, and they go to sleep sometimes. Okay, so she gives him milk instead of water. Red flag number 3. She covers him up with a rug. She may not have had blankets. This is fine. But he would have been covered and not been able to be seen, but also he couldn't see out. He couldn't see anything either. And then the last red flag here is that he tells her that he's on the run when he says, stand at the door, and if anybody asks if I'm here, tell him I'm not. That's a red flag, okay? So look at all these red flags. Joe told me today that red flags mean electrical. I learned that today. Congratulations. Now you all know that too. Okay, you can just leave those right there. Thank you. All right, yeah, give that guy a hand. Okay. All of his reasons for trusting Yael are superficial. The red flags are there, but he's too tired from being on the run to discern them. And he shouldn't have left the responsibility of his own survival into the hands of Yael. So all together now, dumb ways to die. Here it is. You can show that first picture that we have here. Can I have another volunteer? No, I'm just kidding. Just joking. Yael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and took a hammer in her hand, and then she went softly to him and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep from weariness. So he died. I think we have some images of that too. Do we have images? Oh, yeah, that's good. And then he died. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever done. This is the best tent stake that I could come up with, because the ones that they make today, the modern ones, are like very skinny and they're like bendy and plasticky, but these would have been like more like railroad spikes, okay? Very heavy duty. And so just like Deborah prophesied, Sisera's death was at the hands of a woman. It was at the hands of Yael. And so women of these nomad clans like Yael belonged to were in charge of setting up the tents. And so taking the stake and the mallet to put it through Sisera's head would not have been a problem for her, because it would have been something that she was very comfortable with. She had the skills, and she had the tools, and she had the enemy right there in her grasp. And so she dealt with him decisively. And some of you may have the tools to get rid of your enemy. But instead of being decisive, you're acting in doubt. And so you need to change the way that you're addressing your enemy, and you need to see the tools that are at your disposal, and you need to decide that you are going to take care of it. In the victory song, it reads, "Most blessed of women be Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, of tent-dwelling women, most blessed. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. She sent her hand to the tent peg and her right hand to the workman's mallet. She struck Sisera. She crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. Between her feet he sank, he fell, he lay still. Between her feet he sank, he fell. Where he sank, there he fell, dead." Remember, this is a song. So Courtney and Colby, is there a way that we could get a version of this song next weekend? Do you think? Can you imagine? Welcome to the well. Happy Father's Day. Between her feet he sank, he fell, he lay still. Welcome to the well. We think everyone's welcome and everyone matters here. Between her feet he sank, he fell. Thank you, Jesus. Where he sank, there he fell, dead. Can you imagine? This is a victory song that they sang. It's how they told their children about the things that happened. We knew Barak was a knucklehead in this story, but it was Sisera who ended up with the dumb way to die. And his panic put him on the run, and in his weariness, his judgment got clouded. He missed all the signs, and he let his emotions dictate his decisions. He stopped using his head, and he ended up with a tent stake through it. So let me clarify. Emotions aren't good or bad, but how you react to them is. Back in chapter 4, verse 14, Deborah rouses up the troops with an emotional battle cry to get them excited, to get them charging down the hill. And so emotions send us to act in love, to do things in excellence, to show mercy. But if we let them rule us, they cloud our judgment and they push us away from wisdom, and then they set us on the run. And if at the end of your life you're still on the run, that's a dumb way to die. So here's the thoughts for today. Barak responded with doubt, and he lost the honor of Israel's victory. But Yael's response was decisive, and she was called the most blessed of women. Sisera ran away in fear, which led to the end of his life, but Deborah pressed on in faith, which led to the victory for God's people. So as we close today, I would just ask you, where is your head at? Are you walking through this life in fear? Is there a promise that God has given you in your life and you're doubting it? Because maybe you haven't seen the miracles. Maybe you're waiting to see God move in a different way, and God's saying, I need you to act out now in faith. Is there doubt in your life that's keeping you from being decisive about taking care of your enemy? Is it time for us to look at our emotions and decide, are our emotions running us, or are we responding to our emotions? Can we spot the red flags when they show up? Let's pray together. God, we thank you for stories like this, even as outlandish as they may seem. We thank you for the victories that you have promised us in this place today. God, across this room, I would pray right now that you would begin to remind these people of the promises that you have given them. Promises for prosperity, promises for healing, promises for salvation of those that they love. Would you remind us of that? Would you encourage us in that right now, Jesus? And when we start to feel doubt and when we start to feel fear, I pray that we would change that into being decisive. Looking at the tools that you have given us, looking at the place where that you have put us, looking at the promise that you have given us, and deciding today that we're going to walk in your victory. We're going to walk into the place where you have already taken care of the problems. God, would you build up our faith today? Would you help us to use our heads so we don't lose it? God, I pray for a renewed faith in all of us today. We love you, Jesus. In your name, amen. Amen. We did this series in the month of June so that we could do one of these crazy Judges stories for Father's Day. And you do not want to miss next week's story. It's a good one. It's a really good one. Is it a good one? Yeah, it's a good one. All right. Next week is Father's Day, so we've got a quick video, and then Colby's going to come up and close us out.
What style of play were you hoping the kids will establish?
I mean, look, we all know once the ball's kicked, they're going to run where they want. So apparently my job is to just stand there and get yelled at by all the parents.
You spent $34 at the Gorilla Grill. Had you not packed any lunch?
Oh, no, we were prepared. Goldfish, pouches, fruit snacks, you name it. But they see one kid with cotton candy.
Get a chance to catch some meerkats?
And that's with the membership discount.
Your son seemed a bit upset there were no goodie bags at the birthday party.
I loved it. I'll tell you what I don't need any more of. Half-ounce bubble wands, sticky hands. You have any idea how many unsharpened pencils I have in my house? Loved it.
What's your favorite animal?
The lion. The zookeeper said they get 20 hours of sleep a day. I don't get that in a week.
Oh, man. Good morning, everybody. So glad to have everyone here today. Let's get your hands together for Pastor Brooke for bringing that message today. Thank you very much. I resonate with one of those statements there. I don't need any more bubble wands. I have a whole back porch full of bubble wands. Whoever invented those, that's a missed opportunity for somebody else. I look at that and think, man, I could have made a ton of money on that. I also want to say thank you, Pastor Brooke, for being able to sing. I don't know if anybody's been in a service before, the pastor tries to sing, and it doesn't sound that great. I have personally, so thank you very much for being someone that can hold the tune and can sing on pitch. Thank you very much. We've got some announcements here before we close out for today. So, of course, Father's Day is next weekend. So let's celebrate all the dads and all the fathers that we have with us in our lives, as well as we have a couple other events. So She Worships is coming up June 23rd. Female-led worship by our very own Courtney Wilson. Get your hands together for that. We also have a guest speaker coming. Cindy Johnson. She's a dynamic biblical speaker, so that's going to be a really, really great time. We also have She Laughs, which is an event that's going to be held July 21st. Both of those events are going to be here at the Well. That night, She Laughs is just simply a night to be able to hang out, to join with other women, and just have a really good time. Both of those events can be signed up for in the Church Center app and as well as our website. I will mention to you that if you sign up for both of those events, there will be a discounted rate, but each of those events is $20 total. In addition to that, I'm going to say this, husbands, here's your chance, okay, to go to the men's retreat guilt-free, okay? Guilt-free, okay? Take care of the kids both of those nights. Make an opportunity, open it up, say, you know what? I got this. Got the kids. I got whatever else needs to be handled. Cars gassed up. I'll drop you off. Whatever I need to do for both of those events. Not to mention, the women's events are a lot cheaper and less time commitments. So if you don't make it happen, I'm just saying it's a get a watermelon opportunity here to just knock it out of the park, okay? So both of those events, make sure if you can, if you have your wives or significant other, make sure that they're able to attend here. But for the men's event, we have our retreat. We're going to be at a lake house on Lake Granbury. We're going to have opportunities to be able to fish, to be able to golf. We're looking into some options of being able to do some maybe guided fishing opportunities, but we're not sure yet. We'll get some more details to come with that. That event is going to be held specifically October 20th to the 22nd. And that event as well can be signed up for within the Church Center app or through our site for the church here. That event is going to be $200 per person. We need a $100 deposit is due July the 1st, and the remaining balance is going to be due then October the 1st. So if you can, men, please join us there. We're going to have a great time out on Lake Granbury, and as Jack said in the message, every guy gets his own bed, so you're not having to bunk up with anybody. Nobody wants to do that, right? Lastly, we want to say thanks to DFW Outdoor Rental for the month of June. For the month of June, every gift given in the amount of over $50 to any of the Kingdom Builders funds counts as an entry, okay, to win a 2-night rental in a fully stocked camper delivered with a complete setup at Cedar Hills State Park. So this is an opportunity, it's an incentive to help raise funds specifically for any of the Kingdom Builder funds that we currently have going on. So again, any gift or any donation given that's over $50 to either of those any of those funds there is an opportunity to be entered into win that 2-night rental for the camper there. So that's going to be it for the announcements. Thanks everybody for joining us here in person and online. Let's make it a great Sunday.